am your host this evening, Sarah Hine, and I'm always thrilled to interview my really dear friend, my husband's physician, our whole family's physician, Dr. Massa. And we have a really hot topic tonight that we're going to be discussing. So what I'm going to do is we're going to dive right in, because this is the question I get all the time from people. People all the time are struggling with their weight. They're doing all the right things. They're trying to eat healthy. They're exercising. They're mindful of those things. They lose some weight, but they just can't get the spare tire fully off. Mm-hmm. And this is a really growing problem in the US. And we are not focusing on the education of weight loss. But one of the things that Dr. Michelle and I have witnessed this past year is a side effect to gut-brain health is being able to lose weight. And so we're going to talk about this tonight. We're going to address this topic tonight. And so I'm going to bring on our dear friend, Dr. Massa. She owns her own wellness medical clinic in Jupiter, Florida. And she is a medical doctor, family physician that specializes in functional medicine. So she's a smart cookie that has a passionate heart and just loves serving others and helping them heal from the root of a problem. So what I want to, just start with is, Michelle, can you share a little bit about what is this gut-brain axis? Can you just shed some light on that?
Sure. So the gut-brain axis is become a big hit. It's kind of, it's at the forefront of science right now. And it's basically looking at the importance of the gut and the brain and the connection between the gut and the brain. That's your axis. So when we're born, when you're a little embryo, the same cells that make up your gut actually make up your brain, and then they split apart to the brain, and they're connected by the vagus nerve. So the gut actually has its own nervous system as well. But those two are connected. So when we see the adrenals as a connection as well, so those three things function together. And what we're seeing is that people are, some people have an imbalance in one of the areas. It could be the gut. Another one may have an imbalance in the brain. Another person may have an imbalance in the axis. So to really have optimal health, you want to make sure that all three of those are functioning at their best, because that's where you're going to get the most incredible results and really feel your best and be the most healthy. So that the gut part of it, and that's really, when you look at the microbiome, which would be the gut aspect of the gut-brain axis, right, is the central part of your entire health, really, when you're looking at microbiome. It's connected to everything that happens in your body. A lot of the signaling comes from the microbiome, which is where your 300 trillion bacteria live, which is in your intestines, in the large intestine. And a lot of the signaling comes from that microbiome, from those bacteria. So making sure you have this balance of good versus bad bacteria is where you want to have more good, obviously, than the bad bacteria. And your health, the health of your gut really determines what nutrients your body is going to absorb. It's going to determine whether toxins or allergens or pathogens are going to be kept out, right?
Right.
And when you think of a healthy gut, per se, that the key things we want to look for are optimal digestion, optimal absorption, and assimilation, because that's really where you're going to get your nutrients, right? So as I said, there's 300 trillion bacteria, and those bacteria are what's going to be eating the food that you're giving them. Every day when you eat your breakfast, lunch, or dinner, you're actually feeding those bacteria, which break down those foods into different chemicals and different things that we need to be able to survive, obviously, but also to make sure that our bodies are getting the fuel that it needs to be able to function.
Right. So this gut does way more than we ever thought before. And it affects every aspect, really, of our health, which is also included in weight control or weight gain or weight loss.
Yeah.
So all of it. So, feeding the microbiome, it's really specific foods, right? So, what do you recommend? And, tell us a little bit more about this microbiome.
So usually, I always say your optimal gut health always begins with your diet. So you always want to focus on eating foods that are going to feed these really good bacteria, because again, it's about a balance, right? So if you have more yeast and more parasites and more pathogens, you're not going to be absorbing your foods well, right? And you're going to be having really horrible cravings for bad stuff, which we'll talk about. But the most important foods are you're going to want to eat a very healthy, high fiber diet. Okay, so these bacteria actually feed, the good ones feed on this fiber and actually produce signals to your brain to let you know that you're satiated. So they you should always eat something that's high in fiber first, because it's going to fill you up more. So you're not going to want to eat as much, and you'll be satisfied before you start to overeat or eat more than you should. Excuse me, I'm sorry. What I tell people too, good news is if you've eaten terrible your whole life, there's hope for you too, because it only takes 3 days to actually reset your microbiome.
And I was just going to ask that, because that's amazing. There's all these detoxes out there, and these, Whole30, and there's, just all sorts of programs out there. And there's some truth to a lot of them. It's about eating healthy foods. But what's fascinating is, can you share how on earth can you reset the gut in 3 days? How does that work?
So the keys are going to be the foods you eat. Obviously, that's going to be number one. So you want to make sure you're eating unprocessed foods with plenty of fiber, like things like vegetables and beans and nuts and seeds and whole grains. I try not to eat too many grains. I really try to avoid those, because there is some inflammation tied to grains as well. But if you're going to eat a grain, I recommend eating something that's got minimal number of ingredients. If you buy bread, obviously there's like 50 ingredients in it, and half of them you can't even pronounce. If it's a whole grain bread, it should only have a few ingredients, and it should include things like seeds and nuts. It's like nutty bread almost, right? Also, you want to make sure you're eating real food, not frankenfood. And you want to make sure that most of the foods that you're getting are plant-based, because those are going to be the ones that really, really feed those bacteria.
Right.
So you reset. But alongside that, obviously, if you suffer from things like leaky gut, or, like we talked about on our last episode, the disruption of the intestinal lining, in order to improve the microbiome, you also want to take things like glutamine and zinc and other herbs that kind of help heal that lining, so that when you're eating your microbiome foods, your absorption is better. And you want to maybe add some digestive enzymes to help you too, to help, absorb more of those foods and to break down those foods when you eat them.
Right. So I know that seems overwhelming for a lot of people, but here's the cool thing, is that we have this whole thing written out for you. So you don't have to try to remember everything she just said. There is a simple guide. And so that really brings me to this next question. This is crazily all interconnected. It's amazing how our bodies are everything affects the next thing. It's like a ripple effect, right? So when you take a look at mental wellness, truly is affected by gut health, and gut health really affects, really that weight loss, weight gain. And so can you explain how your mental wellness actually affects weight loss or weight gain?
Sure. Actually, there's a lot of research out there showing that, your thoughts and the feelings that you have also control your gut flora. So if you're feeling really, really stressed out, or you're having a really tough day, or you've been traumatized, or whatever it is, those feelings and that sensation, those sensations that you get, actually, you'll hear people say, I feel it in my gut. That's because you actually are feeling it in your gut.
Right.
Bad bacteria start to flourish. So you'll get things like overgrowth of yeast, and candida, which, that's a term most people know, which is overgrowth of yeast. And that makes you crave bad food.
Right.
So these bacteria, they start to really flourish when you're feeling that feeling of angst or stress or anxiety. And it'll start to literally send signals to your brain saying, I'm hungry and I want processed food, or I want chips, or I want dessert.
So true. And we joke about that in this country, that, I'm stressed, so I want this. But
I'm so stressed, I need chocolate.
Yeah, there's a reason behind it. Like now we know why we think that way. And so when we're feeling stressed, and sometimes there's stress we can't avoid. Like you just have like a stressful situation you cannot avoid. So when your microbiome is off, is what you're saying is, if your microbiome is off, your body's going to really, really crave those things. But if your microbiome is on and you're under a lot of stress,
Mm-hmm.
your body tends to be more in a resilient phase.
Exactly.
So you
So
don't
if you're more, when you're more resilient to stress, when your microbiome is healthy, you tend to be more resilient to stress.
Yeah.
And you actually crave really healthy foods, and your palate changes, and you don't crave that unhealthy things. I know I mentioned this to you earlier, but how the word stressed, STRESSED, actually spells dessert backwards. So, which I think is so funny, but it's so true. That's what we go for, right? So when you're feeling good and you've got good energy and you've got, stress is like, just rub it right off. No big deal. I can handle it. And you're feeling good. You're actually, your good bacteria are flourishing. And so, or when you just have a happy moment, or you're so excited or whatever, so it's good to be happy, because that's actually going to make those good bacteria flourish, which is going to lead to greater energy, less cravings, all those things. And you're not going to be as tired, and you're going to be more motivated. And that just leads to better and more healthy decisions, right? So I'll want to exercise more if I've got the energy and I'm excited and happy, than if I'm slumped over and anxious and stressed. I'm not going to want to go work out.
It's so true. The amount of stress a person can be on when their microbiome is reset and healthy, the faster you're like a weeble wobble, just bounce back up. And it's not fake it till you make it. It's like, okay, I can think clear. I can make a decision, even though this is really tough to make a decision. One of the things that I have been blown away with this gut-brain axis is how quickly the sugar cravings can be nipped. Mm-hmm. And that was always a tough one in all the years that I worked in the wellness field. That was a real tough one. I mean, there were all these different programs you could try to pull off that bad candida, that bad yeast, that bad bacteria that feeds off of it, but it was brutal. And it's quite amazing, isn't it? This, finding the focusing on the foods that actually feed the good guys. You can reset it so quickly that you can cut that sugar craving down quite quickly, can't you?
Yeah, if you remove sugar from your diet, within a few days, you should notice a pretty significant difference, as you're not craving it as much.
Yeah.
But sugar, literally, sugar is like crack. It's not like, there's actual studies showing where they take a rat and they give the rat cocaine, and they give the rat Oreo cookies, and the rat goes for the Oreo cookies. So, it literally is, it feeds the receptor that cocaine feeds. So it's that like reward
system.
Think about
that. We are like filling our kids with a lot of crack at Halloween time.
That's right. But once you get on that, once you hop on that bandwagon of eating sugar all the time, it's really, really hard to break that.
Which, what's interesting, I just had someone say this to me today, actually, that they found wrappers, and these were little kids, like 3 and 5. They were finding candy wrappers in odd places in their kid's bedroom or in their like family room, underneath cushions. And it's funny you say that, but it's like an addictive.
Yeah.
It's an addictive thing, right?
It's like crack. That's
wow. When you just said that, my mind went to that, and that's
so what happens too when you start to feed these bad bacteria is you produce a lot of lipopolysaccharides, which are very inflammatory. They actually trigger inflammation in the body.
Right.
This insulin resistance, pre-diabetes, diabetes, and they promote weight gain. Whereas if you're feeding the good bacteria and the good bacteria are flourishing, those actually send the signals of satiety. Right. So you're not hungry, right? But they also will lead to that weight loss because your mood is better. You're not irritable. You're sleeping better, and sleep is such a key factor. You really want to make sure you're getting at least 8 hours a night, because that's going to really help in that weight loss, side effect. Because if your cortisol is up, then you start to put on the weight in the belly area, which I think is what most people complain about, especially as we get older.
And what I've found fascinating with this whole gut-brain axis and focusing on mental wellness is that it just makes sense. And when you focus on the root, everything else flows. And for decades, we've been so focused on the latest weight loss fad and not focusing on good sleep and feeding the body the foods that it needs to keep these healthy bacteria. And so when you start focusing on those things, it's just mind-blowing. Sleep in itself is so important. So I love that you mentioned that. So Michelle, you have fallen in love with this gut-brain axis story. You taught this to Derek and I during the heart of his illness.
Mm-hmm.
And then a little over a year and a half ago, you brought a brand into your clinic that you've just had tremendous results with, because you were looking for something. You were piecemealing all these different things. And,
right.
you know, it's complicated. It's complicated for the patient. It's complicated for the average person.
And it's expensive.
Yes. Yeah, so expensive. And all these things our insurance, our health insurance doesn't cover, all the things that can help and be preventative. So you brought this Amari brand into your office, and can you just tell a little bit about the results that you're seeing in your patients the past year? You know, what are you seeing with people that are cleaning up their guts, connecting them to the brain, focusing on these microbiome friendly foods? Seriously, what are the results?
It tends to, like, it changes every 30 days, I feel like. You know, you start somebody on the program, and the first thing I'll hear is either, I'm not as bloated. I really feel like my inflammation is going down. I don't have like aches and pains like I did. My energy is so much better. I can focus better. I don't feel as stressed or overwhelmed. I mean, these are kind of the things that you hear those first 30 days, right? And then as you get into the 60-day, it's like even better, right? More improvement in the decrease of inflammation, more improvement. My sleep is getting better now. And, you know, it's like this cycle that, you know, this little cycle, and it's starting to turn, and you're hitting all these points. And then it's like, I feel so much better. And then you get to the 90-day, and it's like, you know, they're excited because they're like, now I'm losing, you know, my scale is changing. Because people get so obsessed with the scale. And I tell my patients, throw the scale away.
Right.
Nobody cares about the number except for you. And the problem is that number may not change as you're shrinking, because you're actually keeping your muscle mass, which weighs more than fat, and you're losing fat. So, and as you start to exercise and you're putting on more muscle, you may not notice much of a change on the scale, but your body looks better, your clothes are looser, you're literally shrinking, right? Wow. So I always tell people, get rid of the scale. After 90 days, you can weigh yourself, or 30 days, whatever, if they're really that, you know, intense about their scale.
Right, for sure. So it's amazing, this timeline, and I love that you painted that picture. I think it's important for people to understand we have become a Band-Aid country where we expect this like quick fix, this quick immediate, and it really is a journey. And what I've been seeing, and I know what you've been seeing, is that all of a sudden people are like, oh my gosh, my pants are loose. Or I'm down into the pant size I haven't been into for years. Right. And it just kind of was a natural process. It's like they made these changes. They weren't really focused on that because they're focusing on cleaning up their gut for other reasons. And this like side effect is that they've actually dropped the weight they've been trying to drop for years.
Right. But that's because they're feeding these good bacteria. So you start to make that change in your diet, right? Taking out all the bad stuff. Right. You're feeding your microbiome and healing your gut at the same time with those, things like glutamine and those types of, your absorption's improving. So your body is getting the fuel that it needs to where that fuel needs to go. And so, I hear this all the time when people are like, I've done every diet, I eat so healthy, I don't understand. And I'm like, okay, let's start with your gut, because obviously there's something off there, which is why you're not absorbing your food. So your body is starving in a sense. It's not getting what it needs. So it literally holds on to everything. And then on top of that, you start to get inflammation. Right. So now you have water retention. Now you're puffy all the time and bloated and, whatever. So when you start to really feed the microbiome what it needs, the weight will come off once you get to that stage where the lining is improved, you're absorbing better. So you'll see that happen. It's kind of like this little, and you don't want the magic bullet that you lose, 20 pounds in 10 days. Right. That's not, you're going to put it back on times more. Right. I did the B3. I mean, I've been on the fundamentals for over a year, but I did the B3 program and I lost 20 pounds just doing gut health in a period of 2 months, which is actually pretty healthy. 2 pounds a week is what you're looking for. But some people will lose it quicker because they're so inflamed. And then you see this inflammation go down and they're like, oh my gosh, so it's great.
That's interesting you said that. So if they're seeing a faster, it's because it was from inflammation, which is interesting.
Because you retain water when you're inflamed. you're more puffy, you get like the edema in the legs, you know, where it looks like puffy, or you feel puffy. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. So for those of you that are tuning in, just know that this has been recorded. And so we're going to post this recording because it's some great nuggets of information. And Dr. Michelle has also done some other really great topics that have just been very hot topics. Autoimmune disease, she's talked about this whole gut-brain axis story. She's talked about in a little bit more in depth. I'd really recommend listening to them because she's amazing, and we're really blessed to have her so freely serve all of us with her knowledge that she has studied a lot of years for and worked very hard to get where she's at. And Michelle, you have such a servant's heart. And we thank you.
Sarah.
We really thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And what to do next for you is simply this: talk to the person that brought you here. And the program that Michelle is talking about is called B3. It's a piloted program that we have been working with through the Amari Global brand. And Michelle has brought it into her practice and had just seen tremendous results from her own personal experience to her patients, and to my husband, to our family, and to thousands of people now across the country. And so talk to the person. We highly recommend this B3 program. And, you know, like you said, Michelle, it's finally finding a brand that is very integrity based. It's affordable.
It's easy.
It's all laid out. Yes, it's easy.
Super easy.
The diet, I don't even like to say the word diet, the lifestyle, the foods to eat, the foods not to eat, the sleep, the exercise, the mindfulness.
But also the idea of like the cheat. You know, people always stress around cheating. They're like, oh, I cheated, and they like are so hard on themselves about it, where it's like, if you're going to cheat, enjoy it, be happy about it, be like, it's not even a cheat. I'm just enjoying myself, because that's going to make your good bacteria flourish. If you're shameful and guilty and feeling horrible, that's going to make your bad flourish, and then you're going to put on more weight.
Interesting. So, that mindfulness piece is so important.
If you cheat and you're like, no big deal. I mean, I can't even talk. I've had so many cheat days because I did the B3 during the holidays. I didn't gain a pound. My weights kept coming down regardless. So.
And you find that when your microbiome is friendly too, when you do cheat, it doesn't taste as good. It's so overly sweet that, like, if I had a cookie or, you know, some alcohol, some wine, it's like I would have some, but it was like I didn't need that second. I didn't need that for a cookie. I didn't need the fifth one and the sixth one. It's like I would have a half of one. I'm like, this is really sweet, and it's almost like you don't enjoy it as much because your microbiome
changes your palate.
Yes, it totally changes your palate. So. You know, it's funny because, you know, the saying that your cell generation turnover is every 7 years. And somebody had recently said that, oh, every 7 years, that's what really changes your palate. And I was like, microbiome, the resetting of the microbiome is
like 3 days.
So I like the 3-day reset of microbiome versus 7 years of cell regeneration.
Yes.
Right? But it's amazing the science that has evolved. So anyways, talk to the person that brought you here. Try the B3 program. It's really changing people's lives. And I love this mindfulness piece with it. It just makes sense. So thank you, Michelle, for your time.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
Have you. And we look forward to following up with all of you that are listening to this.